Well, hello, and welcome back to that thing we like to call Curlis Mania, where we talk all things pop rock and prog. Today, we are going a little bit sideways. I do some fusion here and there, and with our good friend George, especially, I love to talk fusion with him. And but today we're doing Frank Zappa, so I'm pretty excited to jump into this. But before we do anything more, of course, I'd like to welcome back to the channel for your third. Is this third appearance?
Three or four.
Four, maybe,
Could be
possibly
four.
four, possibly fourth. Eric Porter, how are you, Eric?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good, great, man. I'm psyched to be here. I had a long day at work, so I'm ready to ready to
Don't we
dig in,
all?
ready to
Yeah,
dig in and talk music.
let's do it.
So today we're doing another battle, as I tend to do a lot of battles. This is my thing. So, we are doing Overnight Sensation, all right, versus Apostrophe.
I
There you
pulled the
go.
wrong one out.
I was just gonna say, isn't that one size fits all?
Geez, that's one size fits all. Yes.
But we could talk about that one. I mean, really, honestly, one size fits all fits into this.
I gotta get the right stuff though, Tom.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm with you. No problem. Um, and while you're doing that, I'm going to unfold this because the artwork on Overnight Sensation is so killer. It
How's
folds
that?
it folds out into this like poster. So cool. Yeah, good stuff. Um, so yeah, but I always say like I really put we could have done a three-way battle on this one because
Sure.
between like Overnight Sensation, Apostrophe, and One Size Fits All are almost like three of three, like it's like that era, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they really work in conjunction with each other. I mean, I think it's a fairly consistent. I know he's got musicians coming in and out, but it's a lot of the same players and uh, like you said, it's kind of a period thing. He'll do something, move on, and they all fit together well.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be up front that I am not a huge Zappa aficionado, and it's really hard to be a Zappa aficionado because his discography is a massive, and he's got so like we just said, he's got so many phases. He's got like the early avant-garde 60s Mothers phase. Then he kind of goes into like, he does like Grand Wazoo where he's doing like, sounds like a big band. Like it's almost like this, where he's almost like conducting a band.
Yep.
And then, and then he goes into this phase where I mean I'm probably missing phases here, but then he goes into this phase where he's kind of doing like he does a little more fusion-ish kind of stuff
Yep.
and more vocals and I mean it's just and then he goes into this whole other phase. So it's trying to keep up with Frank Zappa. The guy was like amazing as far as his productivity and his he was a genius. I mean, let's just be honest, just call it what it is. The guy is freaking unbelievable. I mean, he was so he was he knew that he had a lot of music in him that had to come out, and it never stopped, you know.
Well, and it's funny because I just started reading Moon's book. Um, she put one, I don't know how it hasn't been out too long, maybe a month, 2 months. Um, and she talks a lot about, which is kind of funny, how like dad's either on the road or he's down in the basement working. And apparently, his days where you do not disturb dad when he's down in his studio. And apparently he spent a lot of time down there. So and genius, I think, it probably gets tossed around a lot, but I think for Zappa, no question, musically, uh,
Yeah.
just incredible. I mean, if you haven't, and like you, I'm not an aficionado, and I have to be in the mood for
Yes.
Zappa.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but absolutely incredible stuff.
Yes, indeed. No, I'm the same camp. It's like you have to be in a certain mood. I really I said earlier we were talking before we hit record. I really did immerse myself in Zappa world because for this episode, and it is interesting how like when you do jump into the pool, you almost don't want to get out. It's kind of weird. It's like once you get in and you're in,
Yep.
he's so unique that you're like, you almost want to listen to Zappa like all the time. You know
And
what I mean?
there's enough material where
You could.
yeah, you could spend a lot of time listening to just Zappa. And
Yeah.
like we talked about, I mean, some really different stuff along the way. So, it's not just this. He
He's
touches a lot of areas.
all over the map. And
Yep.
and I will say that this they say for relative newbies that this is the phase that a lot of people jump into, is this like 72, 73, 74
Yeah.
era. Um
And I think we can kind of talk about that, Tom, a little bit, as we're talking about um, as we're talking about the music and stuff, because I do think there's obviously hurdles, probably for someone hasn't heard Zappa or has heard him, and I don't know. I know the silliness can put people off at times, and the complexity of the music, but a lot of this stuff, I don't even want to say break it down. You listen to it, it's he writes catchy stuff, especially for the music that's being played. I mean, there's a lot of melodies that will catch you, which again we'll talk about as we're going through the songs, but um, you know, I do think I would agree that this is probably one of the most accessible periods of his career.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and his band, I gotta say it, it's probably gonna say a million times on this video, but his band in this time period is second to none.
Yep.
Unbelievable. I mean, they are so good. And when you listen to what they're doing, I mean, and sometimes what's interesting about it, we'll talk more about, we're going to get down to all this, but
Sure.
the band is unbelievable. Ralph Humphrey has got to be one of my favorite drummers of all time. I mean, the guy is just unbelievable. Love Ralph Humphrey to death. And I love George Duke. And
Yes,
I mean, it's like and Jean-Luc Ponty. I mean, it's like this guy, it's like an all-star band.
it really is.
And and it's like what's weird though is that the mix, I mean, I don't know if it's mostly on a I think it mostly Apostrophe, where the mix, I mean, the mix is odd. Like when you listen to the mix, it's like the vocals are kind of hot. And like
Okay. Yep.
if you and you sort of have to like sometimes you're like they're doing some really cool stuff in the background. You're like, I can kind of hear it. And then but then like if you listen to the live versions, which I'm going way off track here, but I can't help it. So I was listening to some live stuff because on the 50th anniversary, they have a live at Cobo Hall in Detroit in
Oh,
73 or something. And they're doing this whole like, Nanook Rubs It and Pancake Breakfast. And, they're doing all the suite basically that's on Apostrophe. And you can hear the music so much better on a live setting. And I love the live versions. So anyway, I'm getting sidetracked
no,
already.
no, no. I mean, that's all the stuff. It's exactly what you said, Tom. You may dip your toe in and something catches you or you get intrigued, and the next thing you know, you're immersed. And
Yeah.
there's so much music. Uh, it's incredible. So
Yeah. Well, let's jump into because we're going to talk more about the band. I was going to get into the band. We'll do talk more about that later. So let's jump into the first album, which is Over-Nite Sensation. I can just give you a quick rundown and then I'll throw it over to you. So it was released on September 7th, 1973 on his 12th studio LP, 12th album already.
yeah,
Um, and on the first album on the Discreet label, which I guess was his label that he kind of I think he kind of co-founded it or something, so he could just basically had his own label, so he could do whatever he wanted. Um, this is we talked about an amazing band. This is the first, kind of what I want to say, the first output of this era with this band. And it's I read somewhere it said it was a watershed record from his post '60s output. So it's kind of like this is sort of the beginning of a new era of
okay.
sorts. So what's your take on Overnight Sensation? What do you think?
Well, I think, first, I kind of wanted to get into what you were saying. I mean, not being an aficionado, if somebody's watching this and they're a Zappa historian, uh,
Right, right.
don't get mad that we're skipping stuff. But and this may sound, it's not to be, kind of like you, I just wanted to be honest.
Hmm.
This is why I listen to Frank Zappa.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
high school I tried, college I tried, and I think the silliness always put me off.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
don't know why, it just never connected. And when Dweezil started touring, and again, I have no idea why, my sister and I got talking. I do a lot of shows with my sister, and it probably was because she had a crush on Dweezil. But somehow we said, let's go see this show. And I can't tell you the transformation that happened just seeing that music live. That's what did it for me. I don't know if I would have ever really dug into this catalog otherwise, but I walked out of that show and and this is going back, God, I want to say 10, 12 years ago. I don't think I had any Zappa in my collection. That's just how it had kind of put me off.
Mhm.
And, after that, the collection has built ever since. But that's the reason, honestly, that I got into Frank in the first place. And I think you probably made a great point that if we were going to talk about an accessible period, this is it. And you and I were talking, before we started filming. And I find it very surprising how good some of the melodies are on this record and Apostrophe, where there was crossover. I mean, I had friends in high school who were listening to this, and when you would listen, these were songs that would stick in your head. I mean, I Am the Slime. How does that not stick in your head? Dirty Love. And I think what I really like about this era is this band grooves. They're funky, they groove. The songs you get these nasty, ratty guitar sounds that just are beautiful over the top of that music. That's the only way. There's certain things on both albums and I think I read, Tom, and I know you're a musician, guitar player, that a lot of this stuff was recorded with that little pig nose. Do you remember the little pig nose amplifiers? It was like a 5-watt amplifier.
Yeah, it's
Um,
tiny. Yes.
but
Yeah.
it's this apparently and he's always got that kind of wah, whether it's cocked or whether he's actually using wah or auto wah, or the envelope filter. I think he uses quite a bit. But what I really like about the opening track, Camarillo Brillo, is just amazing. The guitar, the mood of the song. Um, it's a great opener, and I think I don't get into the meanings of the songs. I kind of, and if have watched me on Sea of Tranquility, everyone's going to say, "How do you listen to Zappa? You're not a vocal guy," or you know, I pick on vocals a lot, and again, I don't know if it's the music that just kind of takes me over, but I've been able to kind of put that aside, the silliness and some of the vocal. A lot of it's like Frank talking almost,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I do enjoy the singing stuff. And that might, have gone over to like one size fits all. I think there's a lot more multi vocals on that, where Apostrophe definitely has a lot of Frank up front. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I think like I said, Dirty Love, I Am the Slime, these songs are so Zombie Wolf, Dynamo Hum. They're probably songs if you played for somebody who said, I'm not into Zappa, I don't really know Zappa. I bet you they would, oh, I've heard that.
Yeah.
And radio isn't playing it. So where'd you hear it? Big Brother, neighbor down the street. But it's surprising when I listen to these and I think about, like I said, I wasn't into them in high school. I really didn't get into them in college either. But yet, when you listen to these, I'm like, God, I don't know where I heard them, but I heard these songs and I'm fairly familiar with them. But I do have to say that, you know, Montana closes this one. Uh, the drumming and the guitar solo are epic in Montana. And I mean, take that and check it out live, whether it's a Zappa boot or if you ever get the chance to see Dweezil. I mean, that I really love is that Frank's music is being kept alive and it's being honored. And Dweezil does it right. He's had band members from Zappa's band in there prior. I think I saw him actually this August, and he had pretty much the same band he takes out. There were one or two new people in it. But he does such a fantastic job. But I think when you listen to these, it shows not only his creativity, not only his musicality, but the fact that I think if he wanted to sit down and write a pop album, he could have done that, and
Yeah.
he could have put songs out there that because these songs are the music is odd in a lot of them, and yet you play these once or twice, and I'll guarantee you if you play "I Am the Slime" and you've never heard it before, it's going to be in your head. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
all you need. I really like, I think, just the way these work. Like you said, the band is fantastic, but it's amazing. And when you listen and you hear the music that's going on, and really, if you focus on the music, it's just absolutely incredible. I never am failed to be blown away, even though I may have heard of these a number of times. Just incredible. So
Mhm.
enough of my rambling on this one, Tom. Why don't you throw your 2 cents in?
No, I was just gonna say that my introduction to Zappa, since I was gonna say that the way I got to Zappa was I've always talk about this. I'm a huge Genesis guy. I love Genesis to death, and
Uh,
I've been one of my favorite bands of all time. So I just devour all the interviews and the anything I can find out more about Genesis, I will do it. And I watched a lot of Phil Collins interviews, and one of the interviews he talked about when he wanted Chester Thompson because he heard him on this record.
yes,
He heard him on
that Roxy,
Roxy and elsewhere. Yeah,
Roxy Elsewhere,
he
yes.
heard this and he said that he's like, oh God, this guy. And he said he loved that one on More Trouble Every Day. They do this. He and Chester and Ralph Humphrey, you know,
Yes.
they do this and they Phil was like, that is awesome. Like, we got to do that in Genesis. And sure enough, they do it at the end of
Right.
Afterglow, I believe it is.
Yeah. The impetus for the drum duet, right?
Yes, exactly. So I was like, well, I gotta find this album. I gotta listen to that. And sure enough, it's in there.
That's interesting, Tom, because I meant to say that too. I remember Colin because he pronounces Zappa like Zapper when he says it. He goes, "I heard him with Frank Zappa, and I knew I wanted him in my band." So I remember seeing that interview.
Yes, exactly. So that's what kind of led me to Zappa. Like, but I'm the same way. I kind of had the same prejudice as you did. I mean, I think that we saw things very similarly with Zappa, where it's like, oh, it's kind of a muso thing, and it's like, and it's kind of jokey, and he doesn't really sing. He kind of sings, and I'm really not into that, and I don't really like jokey songs, and I kind of had a prejudice before I even heard any. I mean, I'd heard a little bit, and I was like,
Me
eh,
too. Yep.
I was kind of like, eh, but like I think it takes some maturity to really. It's funny you say maturity because some of the lyrics are kind of immature, but
Yeah, maybe not, right?
but it takes like maybe a musical maturity to because like when you listen to the music, it's very sophisticated.
Yeah.
And it's got this, and at times maybe it's not. Sometimes it's like almost bluesy or whatever. But then all of a sudden, these little bursts of, and you're like, they do it perfectly, and you're like, well, that was cool, you know. So, and to your point, I mean, like, for example, I love 50/50, like where they have that guy that's like screaming through the whole song or whatever, and it's so unhinged. You're like, what is the deal?
Yeah. What's going on here, right?
What is going on? But it's like, but it sucked me in a little bit. And then things like you were talking about, like on occasion there will be some like melodic hooks where like move into Montana soon. It's like all like, oh, this is kind of a cool like hook, and you'll be in your head, like you said, it'll get stuck in your head.
And that in particular, uh, when I've seen Dweezil play that, not only does that, they play that chorus out a little longer than usual. The band just grooves. I mean, and obviously Dweezil gets to go off and kind of do his thing on guitar and just, kills it there. But the band just locks in. That is such a great groove at the end of that song
Yeah,
live. It's unbelievable. And it is on the record too, but it's just unbelievable live.
yeah, yeah. And then of course the famous Dynamo hum, which is very explicit. And I just but I mean, but it is kind of, it actually did make me laugh, because when the whole, like, I've got a spot that makes me hot and you ain't found it yet. Did make me laugh, actually, because I wanted to mention that it's Tina Turner and the Ikettes who are doing the backing vocals.
Yes. Nice.
Um, and I guess Tina brought Ike in. Look, when they were recording this album, she brought Ike in to listen to the track or whatever, and he was like, "What is this? Like, what is this? What is
Right.
this crap?"
Well, can you imagine, hearing this stuff while it's being cooked up in a studio? I mean, you see what's come out over the years that, I think Ahmet has been in charge of all these releases that have come out and all the extra material. I mean, so you think about all these albums he's got, and now they're releasing these box sets that have pretty much another album of material you haven't heard, or variations on the tracks you have, on the standard album.
Right.
I mean, the guy must have been recording 24/7.
Yeah, that's what gets me. It's like you said, I think the guy was, if he wasn't playing live, he was in his basement recording.
Yes.
That's what it seems like to me. And I think, like you said, I saw some of that Moon Unit interview as well, a little bit of it. And she talked about how, like, she went down to talk to him. Like, it was kind of forbidden that you go, if he was downstairs recording, you couldn't interrupt him, like you said earlier.
Right.
And
Dad's working.
you weren't supposed to. And so she would go down. She went down there one time because she was worried or scared or about something or something. And she interrupted him, and she said, actually, he actually stopped and put his guitar down and actually talked to me for a minute. But she said that was rare. Like, that would, that didn't happen very often. Otherwise it was, I'm recording. I gotta go record. So he never stopped. So yeah, I mean, and then Apostrophe is really got under my skin, I gotta say. It really, it got under my skin. I mean, talk about things that stick in your head. I couldn't get out of my head was the "I can't see," peekaboo, or whatever, that whole, like, "I can't see." It's just, I couldn't, like, it was like that little hook thing that had going on with that,
Well,
I think it's
and Tom, you were just mentioning about the bluesy thing. I found Apostrophe to have more of that bluesy feel.
Mhm.
Um, that kind of, and like you said, you'll get into this little kind of bluesy thing, and the next thing you know, you got a xylophone and everything else kind of breaking in and going off somewhere else. But I felt like Apostrophe had that bluesy feel you're talking about, maybe more so than you know, this guy here.
Right, right.
Sensation.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that it's what's interesting is that Frank does like rhythm and blues.
Yes.
So he likes blues and he likes rhythm and blues. So he said something to the effect of, one of his interviews, he said something like, I still want a little bit of rhythm and blues in my play. Like, I love to be avant-garde and I love to be out there, but I also like rhythm and blues. So it's interesting that there's a little more of that on Apostrophe.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. But I gotta say, I really love the, whatever, if you want to call it a suite. I mean, I kind of hear it like a suite. We're from the "Don't Eat the Yellow Snow" until,
Oh yeah.
is it Father Oblivion?
Yes, because it runs right through like Nanook. You kind of, and if you're not following closely, you're not necessarily sure when the song actually morphs from one to the other.
Yes. Yeah, and that was the only reason I knew, was, but I kept looking down, and when I was listening to my car, I kept looking to, oh, this is Nanook now, because it runs right into it,
Yes,
you
it
know.
does.
Um, but I love the suite. I think the suite is really cool. Like, I don't know why, but it just got under my skin. Like, the more I listened to it, the more I loved it. So I love the Father Oblivion in particular. I thought was amazing. I mean, musically, I just thought the music was just so good.
Yes.
And St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast. I mean, I even got into the whole, story of it, like when he's hitting the seal with the lead, what is he?
The lead-filled snowshoe or something,
Lead-filled
right?
snowshoe.
Okay.
And you hear the sound effect when he's hitting the seal.
So
Um,
you're better than me because I'll catch the lyrics, but I don't really study them all that well. But obviously, you're not going to miss that one with the baby seal. So
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so bizarre. It's so strange. And then it sounds like it's like father, it almost like there's like it turns into like a priest who's trying to sell pancakes for money. I don't know what's going on at the end. I don't really understand it, but I enjoy the suite.
And that I like too, Tom. You get the horns, you get a great vibe and synth solo in that. The guitar section is, that might be my favorite section there between St. Alfonso's and Father Oblivion. Uh, that and probably the title track are my two favorites from this album, I think.
Yes, yes. Well, I also love Cosmic Debris. I love who you driving with that cosmic debris? Like I don't waste
Well,
your time on me. I love
that's
that.
another one. You get that, it's got that R&B, right?
Yeah,
And it's funky, but that's another one. I think somebody might say, I never listened to Zappa. You play that, they've heard it.
yeah.
They've heard that song. So
Right, exactly. So what about Apostrophe? It's Jack Bruce and on bass.
yeah, and I really love that. It's like I think at first if you listen to it, someone might think, oh, that's Frank on guitar, but it's that really heavy, distorted bass tone.
Yeah,
And to me, that almost sounds like a studio jam, right? As it's going, you're like,
totally
God, it just
does.
sounds like these guys are kind of letting loose in the studio, and somebody happened to press the record button. And again, I think between Bruce's bass and that distinct guitar tone that Zappa has, uh, that appears again on through Apostrophe. It's just I love, like I said, to me, it's like they just turned the mics on in the studio, and I'm sure that's not what happened, but that's the vibe I get from that, And if they worked on that for 5 days, they surely made it sound fresh because that's just always hit me, that instrumental title track is always killed me.
It's cool. It's really cool. I mean, they almost feels like they just learned that do 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 wow do do, and then they just said, okay, that's good. We learned the riff. Now everything else is just have fun.
Yeah, let's just have
Um,
fun over the top of it, right?
yeah. So, but it's cool. I mean, I what I like about it, I usually don't love when a bass player just runs amok like that, but Jack Bruce can do it so well, and Jim Gordon just keeps a really steady, just real steady beat through the whole
Yep.
thing. He's not going crazy. He's keeping it real steady, holding it down. And then Bruce is going all over the place. And then Frank jumps in, and it's kind of like, oh, this is cool. I kind of like it. And then they come back to the riff for a little bit. It's cool. It's a good track. I like it.
Very good. And I do want to mention, because having seen Dweezil, this is what really made an impression on me. Ruth Underwood has to be mentioned when you talk about Frank Zappa, at
Oh
least.
yeah. Oh yeah.
The vibes, Tom, I don't know that I ever, Zappa's probably the reason I get into vibes, and there's not a ton of it out there, but she's fantastic. And with Dweezil, he's got Sheila Gonzalez, who is one of his touring members, and she does keys and she'll do vibes and stuff. But I don't know what it is, if it's the tone and the texture that you get with the vibes. Plus, I mean, like you said, they're playing these incredible runs, and it's hard to imagine somebody, basically a percussive instrument that gets those sounds. But I love that sound, that tone they give, and the way Zappa uses them and uses her in his material is just incredible.
She's fantastic.
Yep.
And it seems like it's so intricate. I mean, it is intricate. It's not seem
Yep.
like it is. And she's doing, like you said, these like and you're like,
Yep.
whoa. And you know all that's like written out. Like that was written.
It's
You know what I
incredible.
mean?
Yeah, exactly. It
It's like
definitely was written
they're
out.
not just hitting random stuff. That was written. It's just it's crazy. It's when you think about it, it's just like, whoa, from a musician standpoint. Um, Unbelievable. What a band. What a
Absolutely.
And Ralph Humphrey blows me away too. He's like, I just think he's a great drummer.
You can't argue. I mean, I think, and if you listen to and read about all these people that played with Zappa over the years, the respect that they have for him. I mean, I think he pushed everyone to their limit. Steve Vai just talks about um, him almost being a mentor to Steve, and George Duke. Think about all the stuff that George Duke has done, and yet George Duke spent a lot of time with Frank.
He did.
Um,
He did.
you don't do that. I don't know if they were making a ton of money. You had a pretty big touring band. I know some of these records sold pretty well in the 70s. So that, I don't know how much money was actually coming in, but Jean-Luc Ponty, Ruth Underwood, George Duke, like you said, Tom Fowler, another great bass player, Jack Bruce. The list goes on and on. So I mean, he's played with the best people.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Who's the Tom Fowler. So
Tom
Tom
Fowler's.
Fowler on bass, right?
Yep.
Bruce Fowler on trombone, so that must be his brother.
Yep. Brothers.
Sal Marquez on trumpet and vocals. Of course, Ruth Underwood that we talked about, Ian Underwood on flute, clarinet, and alto and tenor sax. Wow, just what a band!
Yeah.
What a band! Unbelievable. And they could just do anything, you know. And I can't imagine. I think I've said this to you. We had this conversation before. How I've seen a lot of Zappa play Zappa on like YouTube and stuff.
Yeah.
Like kicking myself because he came through town and I missed it. I don't know why. I don't know how I missed it, but I did. And I'm just like, really, I really should have gone to that show. I'm
You
kidding.
want to laugh. I was actually getting depressed because he was the last show I saw before the COVID lockdown. I literally saw him on a Wednesday, and
Oh,
I think
really?
everything shut down on that Friday. It was like March, whatever, 13th, and
It
everything
was a
shut down on
Friday.
the
What
15th.
the shutdown was a Friday,
And I
right?
remember that because I saw him on a
Yes.
Wednesday night, and obviously where people were talking about it, and then Friday everything shut down. But I hadn't heard anything like, was he going to do something? Kind of when COVID lifted, and this was the first time he's come around. So whatever, 4 years. And again, just an amazing, amazing show. He's done different tours. He's done like specific albums, and then he'll do other stuff for like a second set, and then other tours have been a mix. This was kind of a mix of stuff.
Hmm.
And he did a lot of Apostrophe for the 50th anniversary
Yeah.
for this
Yeah.
tour too. So
Right. I can't imagine. That must be so great live. It just me.
you got to go, Tom. He'll be
Yeah.
back. I'm telling you.
If he goes, I will not. If he comes around again, I am not missing him.
Don't
Even if
miss
I
it.
have to travel, if I have to go to Chicago to do, I'm going. Like, I'll figure
Cool.
it out. If I have to go to New York, I'll go to the show with you.
Come
Figure it
on.
out. So,
Come on out.
absolutely, I would do it. I would totally do it. But because it looks so great. I mean, the videos that I've seen, he's just killing it. He's killing it, and you're confirming that he does. So, yeah, it's great. Sounds good. I mean, I can't imagine trying to imagine the rehearsal that goes into this, trying to do this.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I think some of them were definitely trained reading. I'm sure he was giving charts to people,
Yeah,
here's
yeah.
what I want you to play. Now, obviously, when they went out live, I'm sure, like you said, that material was worked out in the rehearsals and stuff. But you really break this stuff down. It is very complex music,
Oh,
and
no
that's no mystery. I think people know that about him, but I think some of that, this people do lose sight of that, I guess, probably because maybe more of his image, or like we were talking about with the silly stuff, and
yeah.
but the music's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I mean, Vi, I just before I forget, I gotta say, Vi, one of my favorite interviews of his, he talks about Zappa, where his Zappa audition. Have you seen that one?
No.
Where he talks about auditioning for Zappa, and he was so nervous, and he goes in there and he's like, okay, I need you to play this riff, and he plays it. And he's like, okay, now I need you to play it in 7/8. Okay, plays it in 7/8. Okay, now I need you to play it reggae in 7/8. Okay, it's reggae in 7/8. Okay, now I need you to add a fifth to that. Or he says something crazy like he goes, I can't do that. And he goes, oh, I heard Linda Ronstadt's looking for a guitar player.
That's pretty funny.
And it was what he gave him to do was impossible. There was nobody could do it, right?
Yeah.
So then he said, "You got the gig," and he's like, "Oh my god!" Like he thought he was done. Packing up his
Right.
guitar. I'm done.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah,
throw it in the case and out I go.
so funny, so funny. I thought
That's
that was,
good. I'll have to look for that, Tom. That sounds
yeah,
like a good one.
it's a good one. Steve Vai is such a cool. He seems like such a great guy. Such a cool dude.
Well, I know you're seeing him this weekend. I saw him 2 nights ago with Beat, and in the words of Pete Pardo, he just oozed cool on stage. He
Did he?
was,
Yeah,
oh, fantastic, and that's obviously for another time. But he, again, another guy who cut his teeth, I think, with Zappa. Obviously, he was. Uh, you're not playing with Zappa if you're not great, but I think
yeah,
that got him the exposure he needed to move on. He did the David Lee Roth thing, and then has had a long and pretty successful solo career and White Snake and on and on. But yeah, you don't play with Zappa unless you've got the goods.
yeah. No question. And he was like a Zappa fanboy. I mean,
I'm sure.
he was really into Zappa. He apparently he did some where he sent Frank he did the Black Page, like he wrote it out. He wrote out the Black
Oh,
Page, which is
okay.
apparently like one of the most complicated musical things he ever wrote. And it's because they call it the Black Page because there's so many notes on it. And so he sent him the I can't find the word here, but he sent him he wrote it
So
out.
he transcribed everything.
Transcribed it. Thank you.
Okay,
That's what I'm looking for. Transcription. As he sent him the transcription. So I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, man, I don't know what else to say. I feel like there's so much more to talk about with Zappa, but we're concentrating on these two records. And I just think it's a great amalgamation of talent on these records. And I would include One Size Fits All in this too,
Yeah,
for sure.
my mistake tonight, but I still got it over here. Yeah. Hey, that could be another show, Tom.
Do another show, Inca Roads, Sofa number 1, Sofa number 2,
Absolutely.
all those what's the one, what's the Alan? No,
Andy.
Andy.
Yeah.
That's a really good track.
Great tune. Great tune.
Yeah, Alan. Zappa heads I'm gonna get killed in this video. They're gonna like you.
Yeah, but that's the thing. We put the disclaimer out there, right? We're not historians, we're not aficionados, but the appreciation is there, and there's just so much. There's so much, material and all these new releases, re-releases, box sets. I mean, it's endless. So
much to dig into. There's so much.
absolutely.
And believe me, after this, I'm ready to dig in further. I mean, we might be able to be further episodes where we dig into different eras, maybe.
Well, we've got a long, cold winter coming, so we've got more listening time
we did
on our hands too.
We were just saying it's getting darker earlier. It was like when I woke up this morning, it was pitch black. I was like, oh no, like trying to like get, when you try to get up when the sun's not out, you're like, oh God.
It's coming. It's coming.
Brutal. It's brutal. So, all right. So what do you think after all this? What do you, between these two, which one would you, pretty hard, but which one would you pick between these
It
two?
is. And I want to reiterate what you said. I think this is a great era for someone who, is dipping their toe in the water. Great place to start, I think, for Zappa, because I do think a lot of this material is very catchy. I'm going to go with Over-Nite Sensation. And the only reason they're very close, I feel I like the complexity, I think, a little bit more, of what they do here a little bit more. Like you said, I think Apostrophe has a little bit more of that bluesy R&B touch, which is fantastic, but I think this is just a little bit more in my wheelhouse than Apostrophe.
Okay, there you go.
Both great records, though.
There you go. I'm going with Apostrophe. So there you go.
Okay. All right. Beautiful.
Yeah. I just love, like I said, the first suite. I just love that. I think it's great.
So if you did that, if you had to pick your absolute favorite track from Apostrophe, what is it?
Probably Father Oblivion.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. And then followed closely by Cosmic Debris.
Okay.
Who you jiving with that Cosmic Debris? That just sticks in my head. I just love that. And no, I also love the title track, by the way, too. Love the title track. So there's I have a lot to love, but like you said, it's close. I mean, it's super close. It's not like it's not a runaway win by any means. These are both really solid, really
both classics.
Yeah, they're both classics. So yeah, I mean, there you go, people. I mean, and if you're, educate me, Pete. So
That's right.
if you guys, what do you guys think? What's your favorite from these two? What's your favorite Frank Zappa? I'm curious. I'm learning. So what's your favorite? I always like to know what's your top 5 records or what's your top 5 songs, top 10 songs. I mean, that's hard because it's got 60 albums, but yeah, give me your top 20. I don't know. So a lot of people talk about Hot Rats. A lot of people talk about Grand Wazoo. A lot of people talk about Zoot Allures, so it's all these different era,
I like that though, like you said, in the comments, talk about these two, but there's so much else to talk about. Throw any of the stuff in you want to about Frank, and we'll keep absorbing. And like you said, Tom, if we get a good hit on this one, there's a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. If you guys like this video, let us know, like it, and that way we know we want to do more. So that leads me into like and subscribe if you like what you see. I appreciate it. I gotta say that. Eric, as always, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me. Love doing these.
Always a blast. Always fun with you. It's great co-host. And we'll have him back for more, but we do have to talk about the beat, so that's definitely in the future. We're going to be
Yes.
talking about the beat live show, because we said we were going to do that, so we got to live up to our word. So I'll be seeing them Sunday in this weekend, so we'll figure out a time for
Yeah,
that.
definitely. We'll get a time to do that as well.
Yep. So
They've got a big tour, Tom, so I think putting something out there, they've got a pretty good stretch
Oh,
left.
that's a good point. That's a good
Yeah.
point. We got to wait till the tour's done. That's a good idea. You're right. That's a good point. Because I didn't want any spoilers. I was like, no, I don't want to hear. I don't want to see
Don't want
anything.
to watch, right?
I
Yeah.
kept scrolling when someone would post about scroll. Like I didn't want to see anything, you know.
I cheated a little bit only because every time I went on YouTube, their videos came up. So I did watch a little bit, but that was
so
about
hard these days. This day and age, it's really hard not to get
it. It
spoilers.
is.
But anyway, but if you're with us this long, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you next time on Curless Mania. Take care. See ya.